Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. So for today's video, I'm having homemade nachos and homemade quesadilla bake. So my sister made both these again. So for the nachos, it's just like nacho cheese, Mexican cheese, and then like avocado, jalapenos, olives, and stuff like that. And then for the quesadilla bake, it's pretty much like lasagna but in quesadilla form, so it's like literally layers. I don't know if you guys can see in here, but it's layers of tortillas, cheese, rice, beans, enchilada sauce, and then cheese and sour cream on top. So the reason why we're even doing this video is because we saw this on Instagram. So there's no like official recipe for it, but we saw this on Instagram and we wanted to try to replicate it, so I'm interested to see how it's gonna turn out. I'm super hungry, so I'm just gonna start eating. I hope that this spoon will work for this. We'll see. It's like, oh, it's literally steaming. So that's what it looks like. It's really hot right now, so. Oh my gosh, that is so good. Wow. I mean, you guys can like fully see like how cheesy it is. Oh my gosh. Oh yeah, and there's also tater tots in here too. I totally forgot to say that. There's like a layer of mashed up tater tots. So for today's video, I'm going to be also doing a conspiracy theory. So a couple weeks ago, I think in my last mukbang maybe, or my Q&A, I just kind of brought up the idea of doing conspiracy theories during mukbangs, and you guys seem to really like it. So for today's video, I'm going to be talking about the Princess Diana conspiracy, which I know is pretty well known, but I did some pretty extensive research on it, so I hope if you already know something about it that I can tell you something new. But yeah, I just love watching conspiracy theories. I watch Shane Dawson's like all the time, so yeah, I'm excited to do this. And hopefully you guys like it too. Let me know in the comments. I'm only gonna do one conspiracy for this video because I don't know how long it's gonna take, but let me know if you'd rather see like longer, more in-depth ones, or ones that are more short and like I could do multiple in one video. This is so messy, but so good. I'm gonna go get more napkins real fast because I feel like I'm gonna need more. So I'll be right back. Okay, I have more napkins. These are really good. Okay, so to start off the conspiracy, if you don't know any background information on it, basically, obviously Princess Diana was Princess Diana. I feel like everyone knows who she is. She is the mom of Prince Harry and Prince William. And something interesting that I found out that I didn't know before was that she married Prince Charles, although the way that they met was that he dated her sister first. So he dated her sister and then they met, and then he started dating Princess Diana, and then him and Princess Diana got engaged after going on 12 dates, I think, which is crazy. So he and Princess Diana eventually got married, and after a couple years of being married, they had, I believe they were both having extramarital affairs, and so they just decided to separate and get divorced. And they got divorced in August of 1996. So she died in August 1997, so they got divorced a year before she died. And when they got separated, basically she lost her title. She became Princess of Wales, which I forget what she was even called before, but basically she just wasn't a part of the royal family anymore. It was supposedly an amicable separation, that's what the Queen said, but I mean, they didn't have to do that. And even, I guess there's reports that Prince William told her that he would give her title back when he became king, which is super sad, but yeah, so I don't believe it to be actually an amicable separation. So the night that Princess Diana died, she was with her new boyfriend. His name was Dodi Fayed, and he was the son of a super rich Egyptian business mogul. So his dad, I believe his name's Muhammad, was the previous owner of Harrods, which is like, I believe, a department store. So they were vacationing, and Diana was actually rumored to be pregnant at the time with Dodi's child. And it was also rumored that the reason why they were in France that night is because he was going to pick up an engagement ring to propose to her. So you can see like how cheesy that is. It's literally insane. So the night that she died in Paris, she was with Dodi, and they were supposed to go out to dinner, but recently, when they first started dating, paparazzi began taking a lot of photos of her, and obviously of them together, because it was just kind of a scandal. And one of the paparazzi pictures sold for 250 British pounds, which is a ton of money. And so after it sold for that much money, the paparazzi realized how much money they could make off of her photos, and so she was already followed pretty heavily, but then after that photo sold, paparazzi was like swarming them when they were together. And so that night they were supposed to go out to dinner, but they were being followed too much, and so they ended up just going back. They were going to go back to Dodi's apartment, but first they went to the Ritz Hotel. Because they changed plans, when they went to the Ritz, the night manager, his name is Henry Paul, or Henri, I believe actually, was supposed to drive them, because they always had a chauffeur, so the night manager was supposed to drive them from the Ritz Hotel to Dodi's apartment. And the night manager had to be called back on duty because of this, because it was a change of plans, because Princess Diana and Dodi didn't originally need his help to chauffeur them. And so it was rumored that he had been drinking at a bar that night. And so he got called back in, apparently intoxicated, but was still going to drive them anyways. And there's footage of him at the hotel and everything like that, and he seems totally fine. There's obviously no audio or anything like that, but there's photos where he's standing completely still. He looks very professional. He doesn't look intoxicated at all. If you were to look at the photos, you would never think him to be intoxicated. And so they leave the hotel, and there's decoy cars that leave through the front of the hotel, and he and Princess Diana and Dodi Al Fayed leave through the back to try to avert paparazzi, but some paparazzi catch on and they follow them, and Henri's going super fast in the car trying to evade the paparazzi. The tunnel that they crashed in, I believe, is only 4 minutes away from the Ritz Hotel, so 4 minutes after leaving, he loses the control of the car and he and his passengers crash. Then this is where the conspiracies start, because obviously, I mean, there's obviously going to be conspiracies because she was such a huge public figure, and just the fact that she died when she was with her new boyfriend is sketchy in general. But basically, the first people who arrived onto the scene, there was actually a doctor who was in the tunnel at the time, and so he stopped and he rushes to the scene immediately, and then the paparazzi that was following them also rushed to the scene. And according to the doctor that arrived on scene, Diana was unconscious, but she was breathing, and he also described her as only having a couple drops of blood on her head. And then the paparazzi that got there also actually tried speaking to her and told her that help was on the way. So the fact that the doctors said that she was like reasonably okay, but obviously unconscious, and then that the paparazzi had tried speaking to her when he first got there, just, it seems sketchy that she ended up passing away, although the first people who arrived on scene didn't seem to think that she was that injured. And the ambulance gets there. And the ambulance itself, so when it gets there, they obviously, I believe all other passengers were pronounced dead while there, but Diana wasn't. And so she goes into cardiac arrest, and they are going to rush her to the hospital. There's a hospital that is 5 minutes away from the crash, 5 minutes, and it takes, there's mixed reports, but it took an hour and 15 minutes to an hour and 40 minutes, like, for mixed reports to get to the hospital, which is insane. Especially because especially if you're a victim of a heart attack and a car crash, the only way that they can determine how serious your injuries are is if you go actually physically into a hospital. So basically, many people believe that her injuries were made worse on the trip to the hospital, because it just doesn't make sense that it would take so long to get there. They apparently had to stop several times because she was in critical condition, but once again, you can't treat someone that well in an ambulance. That's why there is hospitals. And so the fact that they even, I guess, in the parking lot of the hospital that she ended up being brought to, I guess the ambulance stopped for another like 15 minutes before they brought her inside, which is just insane and makes me so mad. But her butler also ended up picking up her clothes from the hospital that she had crashed in, and they were apparently, the clothes that he picked up in the baggie were covered in blood, even though the doctor who arrived on scene said she had a couple drops of blood on her forehead, and the paparazzi said the same thing, like it didn't seem like she was that injured, so where did all that blood come from, you know? So there was obviously an investigation after she died, and the French police, or whoever in France investigated it, determined that it was the driver's fault, Henri Paul, who is at fault for killing Diana because he was under the influence and mixing alcohol with his prescription drugs. But, like I said, he appeared by witness reports to have been not really intoxicated at all. And the blood, so when they drew blood from him after he died to test it, the blood that was tested, which may or may not be his, ended up being 3 times the legal limit of how drunk you could be in order to drive. And the blood also had carbon dioxide in it, or carbon monoxide, sorry, not carbon dioxide. It had carbon monoxide in it, which apparently the amount of carbon monoxide that was in his body was so much that if he really had that much carbon monoxide in him, he would not have been able to stand or walk or function, because obviously carbon monoxide can kill you. And furthermore, I'm going to add to this and say that, so let me actually look at what the drugs were. So the blood that they tested contained albendazole, which he was never prescribed, but did not contain alkymprostate, which he was prescribed. So the blood that they tested, first of all, had carbon monoxide, that if you actually have that much carbon monoxide in you, you would not be able to function, although there's actually security footage of him standing and acting totally normal. And there was drugs found in his system that he wasn't prescribed, and drugs that he was prescribed, there was no evidence of it. So many conspiracy theorists think that what happened was the blood ended up being switched, and the blood that they tested did not actually belong to him. They took it off of a suicide victim because the carbon monoxide would be so high that it would actually probably cause death. And they took it from a suicide victim, switched it out, and then pretended that it was Henri's so that they could blame him for the accident. So there's also a lot of other sketchy things that happen with the actual crash itself. So the first thing is that the car that Henri was using to drive that night, they were using a Mercedes, was actually stolen. So the crash happened in August, and the car had been stolen in April of that year and just returned a few days before with the chip in it missing. And apparently it was the only car that they could use that night. And so the fact that it was returned missing with a chip, that the chip that was missing controls the car's navigation and just the overall handling of the car. So the fact that it was returned with the chip missing, and then that was the car that they used to drive that night, and then the car that crashed, is also sketchy. And then Mercedes, obviously the manufacturer of the car, offered to inspect the vehicle post-crash just to see what was wrong with it, if they could discern anything, and the French authorities would not let them. The French authorities literally told them they could not inspect the car. Which doesn't make sense, because obviously the manufacturers of the car would know the most about it and know what was wrong and anything that could have caused a crash, but they were told they couldn't inspect it. So there are also witness reports that there was a flash of light in the tunnel right before the car crashed, and That by itself is kind of suspicious because why would there be a flash of light and then the car crashes? It just seems like a weird coincidence. But so the British Secret Service is called MI6, and a former MI6 agent, what's his name? Richard Tomlinson, came out and said that there was an MI6 plot on this former president of Yugoslavia. I think his name is Milosevic or something like that. And the plot on Milosevic actually had the exact same thing that they were going to do. So the British Secret Service was supposed to kill Milosevic, and the way they were going to do it was that the chauffeur was going to be driving, they were going to go through a tunnel, and there was going to be a flash of bright light. And Richard Tomlinson said that he didn't even think anything of the two similarities between those two cases until he heard about the flash of light, because that's just way too similar, especially because the plot on Milosevic, I believe, was just a couple years prior. So obviously the Secret Service wanted to use that and wanted to kill someone that way, and so Diana seemed like the perfect opportunity, I guess. And so then Richard Tomlinson, after coming out and saying that, got fired from the British Secret Service. And then he also was going to fly to America to be on NBC to talk about what he realized about the two similarities between Milosevic and Diana. But when he got to JFK, he was immediately arrested and put on a flight back to Europe. And the flight that he was supposed to be on, actually, obviously the flight they put him on wasn't the flight that was on his return ticket, but the flight that was on his return ticket sketchily crashed. So if he would have been on that flight, he would have actually died. Which is another super weird coincidence. So I can actually read you a quote that he said. He made a sworn statement saying that I firmly believe there exist documents held by the British Secret Intelligence that will yield important new evidence in the cause and circumstances leading to the deaths of Princess Wales, Mr. Dodi Al-Fayed, M. Henri Paul in Paris, August 1997. So, yeah. So then also the night of the crash, a white Fiat was in the tunnel at the same time as Henri and Princess Diana and Dodi. And the white Fiat was by several, I think there was like 10 or so witnesses that said there was a white Fiat. And the car zoomed out of the tunnel after the crash and got away, basically. And the owner of the vehicle was believed to be a man named James and Danson, who was a millionaire photographer, paparazzi type person, but he was also believed to be an informant to the British Secret Service. So the car was officially never traced, although when they tested James and Danson's white Fiat to the paint that was left on because I guess the cars clipped each other, so the Mercedes clipped the white Fiat or the other way around, and so there was actually white paint on the black Mercedes that they tested that matched the paint on Ann Danson's white Fiat. And so although they could never prove anything, it was believed that that's who was in the tunnel at the time. And guess who turned up dead I think it was like 2 years later? He did. He showed up in a field in a burning car, and he was burned so badly that it took, I believe, a month or so for him to be actually confirmed, that his identity to actually be confirmed. And then the firefighter who arrived on scene actually said that he thinks that he saw a bullet wound in Ann Danson's head. But the official ruling was that Ann Danson killed himself by burning his car because his wife was having extramarital affairs. But it doesn't make any sense that he would have shot himself in the head and then proceeded to burn his car. I mean, it just doesn't work that way. So that's sketchy in itself. And basically people believe he was killed because he had recently been bragging about, because he was a paparazzi, right? So he was bragging about having photos that would shock the world of the accident. And the man who came out and said that Ann Danson had been bragging to him about that also had a mysterious heart attack 6 weeks after Ann Danson's death. So Ann Danson's bragging about these photos he has to a friend. The friend comes out and says that, and then the friend also dies 6 weeks later. Sketchy. So then the last pretty sketchy thing about the crash itself was that there was no footage of the accident at all. Even though there was apparently 10 cameras that could have caught the accident, none of them did because the company that ran the cameras was closing at, I believe, 11 o'clock at night, and the crash happened at 12, which is just perfect timing. Especially the timing with the fact that that night the company didn't have anyone to take over the night cameras, and so there was just no footage. It just seems awfully convenient, especially if there was 10 cameras that could have actually caught the crash on camera. It's weird that it's just weird timing. So then another thing I came across when I was researching is that Diana actually almost kind of predicted her own death. So she was super paranoid, first of all. People used to think it was for no reason, but she would like ask her butler to inspect the car they were about to drive, look for bugs. She thought her phone calls were being bugged. And she also wrote her butler a letter that said that she thought that her ex-husband was going to try to kill her in a car accident and cause her a head injury. And I guess she wrote that letter, I believe, 9 or 10 months after they got divorced. So just the fact that she wrote that letter in general and said that she thought her husband was going to kill her is just like actually gives me chills. It's just so terrifying. And then she also, when she was on vacation with Dodi Al-Fayed, she refused to use, because she was still allowed to be protected by the British Secret Service, or Secret Service, like the same people who protect the Queen, but she didn't want to. She wanted to be protected by her boyfriend, her new boyfriend's security team instead of her own. So the fact that she was using Dodi's Secret Service and not the royal family's just says a lot in itself, because obviously they were supposed to be the ones that she should trust and protect, and she didn't. So and then the last sketchy thing that I came across was that after her death she was actually embalmed pretty immediately, which is against French laws. If it's a sudden death, it might be investigated. You're supposed to get specific paperwork in order to embalm somebody, and the okay was given to the hospital by a low-ranking British diplomat who really shouldn't have been making that call in the first place, but he told them that they could embalm her, and so they did. And that basically just ruined any evidence that they would ever be able to test. because the fact that she was embalmed basically just nullified any evidence they would find, because the body was essentially tampered with. So, because I guess they embalmed her, I think it was a couple hours after she died. So, because Prince Charles and his kids were on the way to see her, and they embalmed her before they even got there. And so it was literally in a couple hours, and it just didn't give anyone any time to accurately test or like try to gather evidence from her body. So that's also sketchy, because I mean, if you can't like check out the body that was found, or like the body that was killed, like how are you really going to get any information, you know? So basically, a lot of people believe that the royal family wanted to kill her because she was kind of embarrassing them, because she had had extramarital affairs and was now had a new boyfriend who was Muslim. And they didn't want, well, first of all, they didn't really want a Muslim in the royal family. And then they also didn't want, so she was super popular, like super popular, and if she was to have kids with the Dodi Al Fayed and she really was pregnant, then that would be like a second royal family in Britain, and they might even get more attention, have more influence than the real royal family did. So that's basically the motive that people believe that the crown would have, is basically that she was just embarrassing them and might potentially even become bigger than them, because people just adored her so much. So yeah, if they thought that she was pregnant, I mean, I feel like that's good enough reason for them to want to kill her if they can get away with it. So yeah, not that I'm saying anything, but I'm saying something, you know? Anyways, so yeah, I'm just gonna stop eating here though, because I'm getting pretty full. It doesn't seem like I ate a lot, but trust me, I'm full. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I would definitely be down to do more conspiracy theory videos / mukbangs if that's what you guys wanted to see. So just let me know in the comments, and yeah, I'll see you guys next time.